You're watching LMCC.
Hi, I'm Kellie Murphy-Ringate, Public Educator and Fire Marshal for the Excelsior Fire District, and welcome to First Responder TV, your local public safety source. Joining me now is Rabe, Cynthia, Amy, and Craig. These are homeowners that all had fires in their homes in 2024. Now, I'll start by describing the fires and then we'll ask you guys some questions. Rabe and his wife Kara had a small fire in their basement. Cynthia and Sonny had a fire in their home that destroyed pretty much the master suite in their second level home and basically, damaged most of the second floor. Amy and Craig had a kitchen fire in their home. Before your actual experience, what was your thinking? How did you think of house fires before then? Did you think about them? Did you get the information from watching movies or television shows? Where did you kind of get your thoughts about what they were all about and how they would spread?
I can start. I didn't think too much about it, to be honest. Yeah. And as I think back, movies, we had a little bit of training in my workplace to just be prepared. You hear your kids talk about how they get prepared, but not a lot of thought, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it was a lot of movies and television shows, and you think it's going to be in the middle of the night, waking you up. Ours was in the middle of the day. And I would say that my wife and also the kids, from what they've learned at school from trainings there, is making sure you have clear exits and a plan too for where to go after a fire. And they actually executed that pretty well. So
good to hear.
Well, and I would say I never thought I would ever have a house fire, ever. And there is not a lot of time to react. My fire was contained in an appliance cabinet in the kitchen, so there was no smoke coming out. The fire likely was going for hours. I had no idea I was in the home until it burst through the cabinets, and then the alarms went off, and we had 5 to 7 minutes to contain it, which my neighbors luckily did come over and help contain the fire with 3 fire extinguishers.
For me, when I noticed the smoke and went down to see what the situation was in the basement, you have about 5 seconds where can I manage this or not? And you quickly make the decision okay, I'm gonna call 911. And I spent 53 seconds on the phone with 911, got them all the information that they needed, hung up, and then the smoke alarms went off. So, that's something to keep in mind. The smoke alarms are not necessarily, during the day, they may not make you aware of the situation in a timely fashion. Your smoke or what you see is going to be the thing that you notice first.
And for our viewers, all of someone was at home when all your fires occurred.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Did anybody want to elaborate on what Rabe said about smoke alarms and when they went off?
So in my case, and it was a little bit different, my experience, the alarm went off. I went and see what was happening. And when I saw the fire, in my mind, I said, I can manage this. We immediately called 911, but still in my mind is, that's the right thing to do, call 911, but I can manage. Got the fire extinguisher, and then what surprised me is how fast it escalated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was likely burning for hours, and I was home, I couldn't smell it. When the fire alarms finally did go off, I didn't think they were mine. I thought my neighbor's house's fire alarms were going off. And I couldn't tell there was a fire till I walked right into the kitchen. And then by that time, it was full engulfed flames rolling across the ceilings. It was in the ceiling. I immediately called 911, called my husband, and I called my next door neighbor. And luckily they were smart. They came over immediately and helped contain it. So if that didn't happen and the fire truck was the first to address the fire, I think it would have been, a lot more damage to the house, a lot more damage to the second floor. I was lucky for my neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Really, the fire response depends on how your fire department is structured. And during the day, the Excelsior Fire District has some full-time people. Firefighters will hang out, but we're not all there necessarily at the same time. Part of my job is going out and doing inspections, and so is our inspector, so we're not necessarily there. So with our department, it depends on who's there. So going on what I asked you originally, so once you did call 911, you made the decision to get out of the house. When you were outside of the house, did you have this vision of what might still be there, how things would look, and how did that differ from when you actually went back inside?
I was just surprised the next day. So I felt like I had a contained kitchen fire, a lot of heavy damage to the kitchen, but the rest of the house I thought, would be in this normal condition. And the next day, we walked in with our restoration company in the fire department, and we had black spider webs on all the floors upstairs. There was no fire upstairs, but all the walls were heavily damaged, and there was soot like on the tops of your desk chairs in bedrooms that had no fire. But it was all damaged from the burning of the fire itself in the kitchen.
Same. It was a big surprise, and you helped a lot, Kelly, in just helping us prepare for the moment, because you said, the second floor is gone. And we saw the impact of the fire as it was going on, but never thought that the impact in the house was going to go beyond the second floor or beyond the master bedroom. So it was really a surprise. Understandable, right? Because of all of the things that happened, but still a surprise when you said, it's going to take you a year or more to go back to your house.
Like, you just don't appreciate how much smoke and soot travels throughout, and every through walls into upper floors. Ours was in the basement. The fire got put out relatively quickly, within probably 15 to 25 minutes of it starting. But there was smoke on the first floor and the second floor. All of our contents get taken out and cleaned. The amount of remediation work and repair work that's going to have to go in afterwards, it's astounding. It's something you just don't appreciate until you actually go through it.
After the fire in your homes, what was something that was totally unexpected and really surprised you about the process?
I'd say it's the administrative work involved of documenting everything, finding accommodations for your family. If you've got pets, it's okay, what do we do with the pets? And it's just not like we're out of the house for a couple of weeks. It's months.
Yeah.
It's instant. You have to walk away with nothing but what you're wearing and a few things that they kind of approve that you can take out. So you walk away from your house, your things. You have no home. You have to go figure out where you're going to stay, and then you realize for us it was 7 months to restore our house. So
Yeah, that was probably the most shocking thing, is just talking to you while you were on site the day of the fire, and you're like, you're not going back in there. And you're not going back in there for 3 to 6 months, what ended up being 7, but you're just like, what now? Well, get on the phone, talk to your insurance company, and get things going.
And then all your things are managed by who you hire to restore your home, but they're going through all your things. They're inventorying everything in your drawers and your cabinets in every room, and then they decide what they can clean and get, and what we can't have and what they have to throw away, and then you have to decide what are you going to keep. But you don't deal with any of your things until you move back.
I would just add, I agree. It's just a slow process, but it's also the emotional strength that you need to have to go through the administrative process, but also support your family and make sure that everybody's dealing with the transition in the best way possible, just taking care of that other aspect that people don't usually talk about.
With your family, was school starting the next day or the next
week.
The next week.
Yeah.
So talk about that challenge, if you would.
Yeah, I think it's part of that, right? If you have children especially, you're showing your children how to manage stress and issues because they're watching us. So for us, it was just, create the least disruption possible given the circumstances. So, everything else we knew, the first thing is just being grateful that we were all doing well. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, how do we get these kids back to school in the best way possible without causing disruption? And I can share. The next day, that was a Friday night, our fire. The next day on Saturday, my kids were in their soccer practice. The Sunday after, they were in their softball games. Because we had just a community of support that helped make that possible.
So what part of the process was most challenging that we have not already talked about?
It takes a long time, but there's still a lot of time pressure and a lot of decisions to be made in a short period of time. So you'll get into a feeling of decision fatigue after a while, because there's so many decisions to be made. And you got to make it jointly, and there's this dialogue that needs to happen. Ask yourself, is this a decision that needs to be made today, or is this something that can be pushed off till later? And it's really hard to do in the moment, and I think that's why talking to people who've gone through a fire can help you through that and navigate that process.
Would you like to add to the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, the process is long and a lot of decisions, and you kind of take it step by step by step, but there's a lot of details, and I would go through every detail of each of the steps, and you would find things weren't on your inventory. You would find the values of what was on your inventory probably wasn't the right value. And so like you had to go through each step and assess it to make sure it reflected what you know about the things in your home. And I think also the time each of these steps takes, you think, why can't we get this going? I want to get back in my house. But you got to go do each of these steps. You got to get the content out. You got to get all the carpeting out and all the new stuff and all the walls painted and all the ceilings painted, and before you can even begin to rebuild the kitchen. And so it's just a lot of steps, a lot of details, and you kind of have to get your builder, your restoration company, and your insurance aligned. That took a lot of time. It took a lot of our time to help get them to agree on the value, or what it would take to restore our house. So
We've talked a little bit about how it affected your family. Would anybody like to elaborate on how it affected the family, the kids? And I'm thinking that not everybody went back to work the next day. I mean, it affects even your workplace.
Yeah, I mean, I essentially probably took about 2 weeks off from work, just navigating and managing stuff. Luckily, it was summer, so it was a little bit quieter for us. But I mean, when thinking about how it affected my family, keep in mind, like, it's going to affect each kid differently, and that's okay. Some kids are going to be very much like, okay, they become very resilient to the situation and realize, like, okay, these are just things that we lost. I realized that wasn't important. Other kids, it's going to be very important to them that they've lost things, and it's going to be a real challenge. So you have to be able to navigate that and understand that everyone's going to react differently, and they're both right and valid in helping them through that. And just recognizing that it's completely disruptive and a stressful situation. And I think Amy pointed out is relying on neighbors and Cynthia too, like in friends and family. People will offer to help, accept it. They really are. And I mean, I think there's a very much no, we can do this. No, people are offering to help and they will do things for you. I mean, not do things for you, but they're genuine offers, and nobody really knows how to help in that situation, but when they do offer it, it'll take a load off of you, and it'll be great. And it's been, in a strange way, really tightened the bonds that we've had with our community and our friends.
It resonates so much to me. Kara was so amazing to our family. For our kids, I totally agree. It was each had their own different experience. One of them wasn't there, the others were, so it was just understanding where each of them were. I think the other important piece is just the community. So I remember a lot of people asking, what do you need? How can we help? And I didn't have an answer. So I reflected a lot, and I want to be able to say yes, I just don't know how. Until one day I said, give me advice. There's so many things that I don't know because I've never experienced a fire before. And that's where I met Kara and at least 2 other families who had gone through similar situations. It helped us so much. Just talking, just going through, Kara and you had gone through the process a little earlier than us. So there were many things that they explained it to you in the moment. You just don't understand it in the moment until someone else kind of go through it again. That was huge in our case. And it was just that community that was so present for us.
Our kids are a little bit older. We have 1 in college and 2 out of college, and they're on their own. But I reflect thinking that if this happened 8 years ago, how much more difficult it would have been with every one of them in sports, all going different directions.
To add to that, I think it's got to a mindset it's a new normal, and it constantly is shifting. But you guys, okay, this is our new normal. This is what it is, and it takes a while. But humans adjust to the situation relatively quickly. That's not to say that there isn't some trauma and stuff still underneath that people are working through. I guess the advice I give is you're gonna get through this, and people are here to help.
And I was just going to add, I think it's important to figure out where you're going to be comfortable the day after this happens. The first couple of days you're processing and you can't understand what's happening. We stay with family, but then by the end of the weekend, I'm I need to know where my home is now. So I went and found, a short term just for a week where I was going to be comfortable, where I could work. And then I found our long-term home, and I went and I did that. I then worked it with the insurance company. Here's my plan, versus having them tell me what I could do. I needed to go find that place that I was going to be at for the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, and that conversation with the insurance company is key. And it's, for us, our insurance company has been great, but it took a while to get to basically the adjuster with the right level of approval authority. And once we got to that person, it was pretty good, but you still have to sort of take control of the situation instead of let them tell you, because you might end up waiting. And when you're in this situation, you don't feel like you have time to wait for where your family's going to be staying. Yeah. So you really do have to be proactive, and it's challenging because of everything else that's going on.
So what are some of the positives that came out of your experiences? I hear a lot of community neighbors helping, but what other positives?
I think it was just seeing the generosity of the neighbors, like we talked about, and friends and family. I'd say for the kids, it was, in our town, they've seen the firefighters, they've seen the police department before, but to see those people show up at their house gave them a sense of comfort that things were going to be okay. So they recognized these people. It wasn't, house on fire, yes, scary, but seeing people that they knew and trusted, that was really good. An opportunity for everybody to sort of realize what's important, things or not, and I think that sort of helped a lot for a lot of kids and ourselves as a family. I think we're going to be more resilient after this. You kind of go through that okay, that was bad, but we survived it, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be at the beginning. So I think that will help them long term.
100% agree. I think I was the most inspired by my children. So they're ages 3, the youngest, to 15, our oldest. They were so grateful. Even when the fire was so recent, they were just grateful. They would say, we're all good. Of course, they said, I miss my home. Of course, they were missing things, but all in all, they were just grateful being together. My husband, Sonny, and I talk about how, after we kind of settled, we were doing the same things that we used to do in a different home, but the exact same things, the exact same dynamic, because you just go back to who you are at the core, at the center.
Some of the positives I would say is that you actually get rid of a lot of the stuff that's been in your house that you didn't need for the last 28 years that we've been there. So so that helped us just organize our house. I would also say I was really happy with our insurance, which I wouldn't expect when you go through this, but I think we had we had good insurance, meaning they were paying for our housing during the restoration. Any issue, they really accommodated any concerns we had or documentation that we had that we didn't think was fair. Or, our insurance company really was good to work with.
So I'm going to gather from that your agent was good to work with.
Yes.
As a fire investigator, I work with a lot of different insurance companies, and I will tell your agent makes the difference. We've talked a lot about your experiences, but if you had 1 or 2 things to tell our viewers about, what you learned, what you think would be good advice for them if they ever have to go through this.
I would say know your policy. Know what's going to happen. It's like if you look at your policy, you'll know exactly what you get, and contractually what the insurance company is required to do. And so, like Amy said, our insurance was pretty good, and we were very happy with it. But I've heard, other people where they just have trouble with their insurance companies getting things approved. And
there's enough stress in getting your house restored that having the insurance and the financial commitments there made it a lot easier. Our fire was a kitchen fire. We had a toaster that heated in an appliance cabinet that burst through, and there was a big kitchen fire. So my advice to everybody is leave your toasters unplugged and do not use an appliance cabinet for your toasters. And the other thing is I had a fire extinguisher right there in the kitchen, and I didn't really know how to use it. I didn't even have the mindset to go get the fire extinguisher and put it out. Luckily my neighbor did, and they did do that. But, knowing how to use a fire extinguisher, when to use it, have a plan so that you know what your options are when this fire starts. Because I was so shocked I didn't know what to do.
I want to build on that because I think, there's never too much prevention. It doesn't matter how young a child can be, there's always opportunity to teach them, practice with them. I knew how to use a fire extinguisher because I was taught in my work. And I knew what to do. I had not used a fire extinguisher in a very long time, and I knew what to do. But then I think of my older children, would they know how to do it? I think the answer is probably not. And we talked more about it, and even practice. It doesn't take a lot of effort to just practice, go through the plan. One of the things that was difficult for me is just think of all of the things that could have gone wrong that didn't. We were really lucky. Everybody was okay. But just thinking through that makes me realize that you need to continue to talk to your children, your neighbor, to your community about prevention and just being super, strict about what things you put in your house. And in my case, we don't know the real cause of the fire, but it just makes you think, are you using the right appliances? Are you using the right ports? Like, just question everything, because if it's about safety, it's a priority. One piece to add, it's just, that was a big learning for me. It's just knowing what the fire department does and a whole new level of respect for the fire department and what they did. Like, we saw, people coming in our house, we saw them to the eye, and just, it's a hard work. So I think for me and my children, it was a big realization of this is really a hard work that people are doing for our home, for us.
Learned a lot about fire prevention out of this, and there's nothing for our particular fire that we could have done.
No, there isn't.
The things that I would tell people, before they've had a fire, or people who haven't had a fire, it's like call 911 immediately. For our situation, it was in a basement, which can be a very dangerous situation, and it was in the ceiling. So call 911, get everybody out of the house immediately. Pets too. When police show up, because they're typically going to be the first ones.
Because they're already out on the street.
Right.
Yep.
Communicate with them, who's there and all that, so that they know what the situation is. And keep in mind, everything in the house, it's cliche to say, but it's replaceable. And it's more important, to make sure that the people are out of the house and safe. Have a plan for your family, and with kids especially. Some kids will follow it better than others, yes. But it works. Have clear exits. The other thing that I learned from this, and again, that wasn't in our case, but about extension cords, and it's from all the fire investigators that we talked to, was, if an appliance has a short cord, it has a short cord for a reason. You do not put it someplace far away from an outlet and use an extension cord. That is a real huge risk. And these sorts of things where you will learn through this process, if you ever go through it, a whole lot more about fire safety and fire prevention than you ever imagine you could know. And I know going forward, we're going to be much better about this, and hopefully never have to experience this again.
You mentioned pets. So I had a cat and a dog, and the dog stayed by my side, the whole time. The cat hid. We couldn't find the cat. The cat was in the fire the whole time, and then we had to go get the cat. But you had to make sure the cat was okay, and you had to make sure. I didn't realize, they could have gotten all that harmful smoke and breathing, and you had to bathe them to get the soot off their fur. And we were lucky. The cat hid well and very far away from the fire, so it was okay. But there's impacts to them too.
Being an investigator, as I tell the family, if your dog was exposed, get that cat to the vet, because their lungs don't have the capacity. And now you have to give them a bath with Dawn dishwashing soap, and cats love baths. So that's some of the challenges. So something off of what Rob mentioned is, the police get there, and there's this point where we determine that all the family's out and all the pets are out, or they're not. As the firefighters are driving to that fire, they're tactically thinking about what they're going to do, and the information we get from dispatch, everybody's out. Then we're like, we don't have to do search and rescue. There's a dog inside. Okay, we need to know when we go inside the door to look for the dog. There's a cat. So we start planning, and as we get that information, our plans change. So all that information is actually really good information, and always call 911. I tell people, you call 911, you can always slow us down or stop us from coming. We talked a lot about fire prevention, and when you've had a fire, you put it on your radar. It's there. Well, hopefully what we're talking about today will put it on other people's radar, and people won't have that fire. And they might find things in their house that they're going to go, oh, Wow. So anything else you'd like to add?
You know, I know we've offered to the Excelsior Fire Department as to be a resource to people who've had fires. And I think, I mean, we know neighbors of ours who had a fire, and we talked to them, and it was super helpful to go through that process and be able to understand what it is. And I know we'll be happy to do that going forward for anybody, because that's, you know, you don't know what you don't know, and and you can help stage people like, okay, this is what you need to worry about now, this is this, or this is what the experience is like, which can be helpful. Documents that you have to sign, you know, with whoever, read them carefully, you know, ask questions, and like, can this wait? You know, there's going to be a lot of, you feel like you have to make a decision, you have to do something, and somebody's like, okay, maybe you don't. Take a step back, look at it, and see, you know, and it's hard to do unless you've talked to somebody who's been through it.
I would only add, you know, push back when you have to push back, as we were saying, you know best what you need, and there is hope. There is, the human is just so resilient, so there is hope, and people are going to get through it.
Yeah, and just I would advocate for yourself. Make sure you understand what you're agreeing to, making sure you understand the inventory that they've put together, that, you know, you understand what they're actually going to commit to restoring your house. And it's a long process and a lot of details, but you know best of what needs to happen. So.
Well, thank you all for spending this time with me, and really this is going to be helpful to so many people. It's going to change some people's lives. Thank you. Next, Mike Lindstrom from Lindstrom Restoration shows us a home damaged by a fire in a neighborhood just like yours.
I'm standing at the end of a driveway of a home that just recently had a fire. Normally, the people that live in the home are standing at the end of the driveway with me, watching the firefighters fight the fire. The intent of today's segment, After the Fire, is to motivate you, our viewers, to know more about fire prevention so you can prevent this tragedy from happening in your home. Now, firefighters fight fires, but fire educators have to fight complacency. People think, this isn't going to happen to me. It's never going to happen in my neighborhood. This will happen to other people. They tell themselves, the fire station's across the street, fire hydrant's just down the road. I know a firefighter on the block. This stuff will not prevent a fire in your home. You have to know about fire prevention. Do you know how your fire department operates? Is it full-time? Is it paid on call? Is it volunteer? How do they respond to fires? When the fire district has a fire and we deem it's safe for people to go back in, I try to prepare the people that live there for what they're going to see when they walk in. The images they have in their head, and most people have in their head, are usually from TV and movies, and that's just not reality. Usually they're devastated, overwhelmed, and shocked by what they see. Let's go check it out. Here we are inside with Mike Lindstrom from Lindstrom Restoration, and today we are going to show you what a house looks like after a fire.
Absolutely. It's good to be here, Kelly.
So let's talk about where we're standing and what we're looking at.
Yeah, well, we're here inside the entryway to the home. It's a split level, kind of built between 1978 and 1980. And we see this a lot where there's some lines here and marks with the soot. And what are we looking at, Kelly?
So a lot of people don't realize that in a fire, the hot, black, icky smoke goes up. When you're sitting at a campfire or in front of your fireplace, that fire goes up into the sky, it goes up into the chimney. And it's not usually hot, black, icky smoke because you're burning wood. But when you're in a home and you have fire, all the contents are creating this soot, this blackness that goes up and fills the room up. And what you're looking here is at the soot, how it's coming down. Now, this line here where the drippings are is where the firefighters came in with their fire hose, hit that hot, black, icky smoke, and steam was created, which is causing the dripping marks that you see here. But down below you see this clearer space. This is when we talk about crawling low under smoke, because this is where the cool, clean air that's in the room remains, and that's how you can get out safely. So it's cool down here and almost up to 1,500 degrees up here.
So I'm 6'2", and if I was in this home during this fire, basically, the smoke would be here at my hips.
Yeah, but you would be crawling low.
I'd be crawling
That's
low.
why we crawl low under the smoke.
Sure.
So we can get out and stay out.
Okay, Kelly, so here we are in the kitchen. What are some top 3 things that homeowners and citizens in the area should be worried about with fire? And then also, what are some things that basically everybody could do in their own kitchen, in their own home to either, put out a fire or prevent a fire?
Okay, so the top causes of home fires in the state of Minnesota are cooking, open flame, and heating. So let's talk about cooking fires. Most of the cooking fires in Minnesota occur on top of the stovetop. And it's because people are walking away from the stovetop. We call it unattended cooking. And for whatever reason, they're answering the door,
Their kids.
checking on the kids, going to see why the dog's barking, ordering wreaths from the scouts. For some reason, they're walking out of the kitchen. We've actually even had people that have been standing in their kitchen, texting, social mediaing, doing something, and the fire actually occurs right before them. So a lot of people, when they come in and they see a pot on fire on the stove, because they've, been at the door talking to the neighbor.
Sure, we're going to get some water over here, right?
Right. And we've been taught our whole lives, put water on fire.
Sure.
So when we're in a panic situation, what are we going to do? We're going to panic and go, I've got to put water on this. Well, you can't do that on a stovetop, because you could be cooking bratwurst, frying French fries, making hamburgers. So what you want to do is take the lid of the pan, okay? And you actually want to treat that like a shield to protect yourself from that flame, and you just want to slowly slide the lid over and turn off the heat source. Now we tell people you want to leave it, overnight or till that next evening. You just want to leave it on the stovetop for an extended amount of time, because it will flare back up if you take the lid off. Now, if you don't have a lid, grab that baking dish, put it over. Grab that cookie sheet or pizza pan, put it over. Turn off that heat. It's as simple as that. Now, when it comes to open flame, most of those are candles that are unattended or put in the wrong place. So I tell people, treat your candle like a toddler. Would you leave a toddler alone in a room? No, you shouldn't leave a candle alone in a room. You should blow it out before you leave. And also, it can't be around curtains, underneath cupboards. Sure. It's got to be somewhere where that flame, that heat from that flame isn't going to spread and start a fire. And then the other one is heating. And that can be because you haven't had your fireplace checked or inspected, which you should do on a regular basis, or they're putting their space heaters too close to combustibles like couches, beds, curtains.
Sure, 3 feet or more, right?
Yeah, 3 feet or more. Very good. Yeah, so that's the 3 things that we want people to pay attention to so they can prevent this tragedy from happening in their home.
Okay, Kelly, so here we are in the hallway. We're just outside the kitchen. The entryway is over there. And I believe the fire came through the window in this bedroom and then worked its way down the home this way. So we're seeing ceilings are down, there's holes in the wall here. Kind of what happened here? Was this from the fire or is this from something else?
Okay, so after the firefighters come in and put out the fire, we still have to make sure it hasn't spread. So what you're looking at is firefighters have to pull ceilings to make sure it didn't get into the attic. Behind you, we had to pull the wall apart to make sure it's not in the walls. And even when you look at the door trim and the trim on the doors, we usually have to pull that off to make sure the fire didn't get behind the trim or get anywhere.
Okay.
So that's why the insulation's on the floor. And what people don't realize that even if the fire's out, we still have to come and look for it, make sure it hasn't spread, and then we have to use water for hot spots. So we're bringing even more water into the home. Now, we talked a little bit about fire behavior and how the hot black icky smoke comes to the top and comes down. And in this hallway, you can see, here's our soot, and here's that cool, clean air still down here. You can see where it remained clear. Now, fire spreads by heat, not necessarily flames. Flames can stay in the room, but it's the heat and the black, icky smoke that spreads through the home, and it's the heat that spreads the fire. All you need is the hole the size of a pencil to spread that heat and cause that fire to spread. That's why firefighters have to pull walls and ceilings.
All right, Kelly, so as we head down the hallway, I just want to point out, this door here is this example of all the doors we have in the house, and this is a hollow core door.
Yes.
Right, nothing special. It's basically a couple layers of wood and a little bit of cardboard in the center for structure, right? So, and here it is.
Yep, and what we're looking at is, again, that hot black icky smoke was up here, that heat. And it took, it damaged the top part of the door, but if you look down, again, this is where we crawl low. This is where there's no damage. It stayed cool down here.
Okay, as we go down, this would have been their office. And the fire got into this room through the window, as I remember correctly. And you can see they have the same hollow core door here but it's been consumed all the way down.
Right, because the fire came from this direction, so there was more hot, black, icky smoke, and of course, more of the door is gone.
Okay. And as we continue down, we get towards the primary bedroom of the home, and this also had hollow core door that was open. You can see your lines here as well. And this is where I think the fire first got into the house, basically. And
again,
there's a really interesting closet door at the end of this room.
Yes, and again, most of the door's gone. So now let's look in the closet. This door was closed during the fire. Now we walk inside, we can see. You can tell that that's an ironing board. You can tell that there's clothing here. You can see a walker. You can see a speaker. Right here was a wardrobe. Clothes were hanging in this portable wardrobe. You can't even tell what some of this stuff is. A closed door will keep that hot, black, icky smoke out of a room for 10 to 20 minutes. So that's why we tell people we want them to close when they doze. So before you go to sleep at night, we want you to close that door. Or before you go on vacation, walk through your house and close all those doors, because this is going to protect that room. It's going to prevent fire spread from going in the rooms. It's breathable air, it's cool. You can survive in this room for a long period of time. Once I bring the people that lived in the home back into the home and show them around, they are, again, they're devastated, and they don't realize that the extent of the damage and how much stuff is actually covered with this black oily film, and they want to take things home with them. They you know, the kids want to grab a stuffed animal, they want to grab a hat, they want to grab a piece of clothing, they want to take something home with them, but everything has that oily film that I'll talk more about, and it has that smell. And just something this size, you bring it to your hotel room, you bring it to where you're staying overnight, and it will smell up the whole living space. It'll make everything smell.
Sure. Well, the other thing that we see here a lot, and we have a thing over here, is we've got canned foods, we've got, you know, peanuts and things like that. I mean, they're all sealed. This may still even have the little vacuum seal on it. We'll say medications and things like that as well, but you shouldn't be taking those things, consuming them, cleaning them off, and you know, bringing them with you, because, you know, the heat and the smoke, it's toxic, right?
Right. So when that hot, black, icky smoke goes up, it is hot, very hot, and it's black and it's toxic, and it banks down. What people don't realize, our daily lives are full of things made out of petroleum. The paint on the walls, the wallpaper, our clothing, basically everything we use have some kind of petroleum base in them. And it's okay when it's in normal conditions, but when it's heated up, it burns, and it burns this and creates this oily film, this almost soot that you can feel in your hand, and that covers everything. And people also don't realize that this soot is cancerous. There's carcinogens in this. There's different things that are toxic that you can't breathe. And that's why it's so important you get out and stay out in under 3 minutes. And that's what you see, this coating of all this stuff is toxic. That's why Mike and I are wearing gloves.
Sure. So even if you could clean it, you shouldn't. Don't even risk it.
Because it was also probably heated up.
Okay, Kelly, so here we are back in the entryway, right? This is where the family had their way to get out of the home. So we've learned a few things today, right? We've learned about a single hollow core door can save your life. It can prevent and buy you some time and things like that. What are some of the more finer points about, you know, early warning and notifying your family about a fire that may be going on? I know when I was a kid, I was told I had, you know, 7 to 10 minutes to get out of the home if I heard the fire alarm go off, things like that. You know, we all learned stop, drop, and roll. You know, what are some of the things that have changed that we need to know about?
Well, the big change has been it's no longer 7 to 10 minutes. It's 3 minutes to get out. And that has a lot to do with, again, the things we talked about, how the contents of our home are not really natural fibers anymore, like wool and cotton. We're dealing with a lot of petroleum products that burn a lot hotter and burn a lot faster. And different homes, newer homes, are made out of different construction, and that construction fails a lot sooner. And it's not that your new home isn't good and solid, but under fire conditions, that changes. So we tell people they have to be out in 3 minutes. And the only way you can get out in 3 minutes is to have early warning and to practice. So early warning means having a smoke alarm. Now, right now I have a carbon monoxide alarm in my hand, but you want to have smoke alarms, and you want to have them in the right places. So you want to have them on every level of the home, outside sleeping areas and inside sleeping areas, and areas where people sleep. People don't realize if Grandpa falls asleep in the living room every night, that's an area where people sleep, and you have to have a working smoke alarm there. That means buy one with the 10-year lithium battery and make sure you test it once a month to make sure it is still working. Then you also want to practice your plan. Now, your kids in school, do they practice a fire drill?
They do.
Yeah, and I bet your kids can come home and tell you exactly. They lined up at the door, where their meeting places, the hallway they walked down, and they probably can tell you that the whole school got evacuated in 3 minutes. Well, if a whole school can practice and evacuate in 3 minutes, so can anybody in a home, but you've got to practice your plan.
Absolutely.
So we have to practice. Families have to practice their plans. Now, schools do it five times a year. Families should actually be doing it once a month. And again, you have your smoke alarms that will warn you. You can get out in that 3 minutes. So you won't have to find your second way out. You won't have to worry about being behind a closed door and having an atmosphere that you can live in until you can get out another way. So that's how you make sure your family can get out, stay out, and be out in 3 minutes.
That's fast.
It is.
That is really fast. What is the average response time then for a fire department or a volunteer fire department in your community? Is it that 3 minutes?
Well, so we tell people that they have to be out in the driveway or outside of their house watching the fire department actually arrive. They should be out by the time that the fire department arrives. Now, you and I, growing up, the fire department came in a lot of time and was able to rescue people because you had 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but that's not the case now. You should actually be outside before that fire department arrives, regardless if they're full-time, paid on call, or volunteer.
Okay, Kelly, so here we are down in the garage of the house, and this is below both bedrooms, and this is where the fire started. So currently the source of the fire is a little bit undetermined, but basically, everything in this room was completely consumed, and because there was a fire door right where we're looking right here, was pretty much stopped right there.
The fire door did its job.
Fire door did its job, right? That's why there's codes, and then it had to work its way out and up.
And that's how it got inside.
And one of the homeowners here was actually behind that door sleeping, and heard some crackling and things like that. Woke him up, didn't think much of it, went back to bed, and then smoke alarm went off.
Oh, okay.
Woke him up, got everybody, I think, out upstairs, and then had to wait for the fire department to arrive.
Yes, and I believe that the fire upstairs came from down here and went through the window, and that's how it got upstairs.
Yep, that's correct. Came out the garage door, up, and broke the windows, and then worked its way through.
And as people can see, there's nothing salvageable in this room, and usually that's what happens in the room of origin, as we call it, is there's nothing salvageable. And the flames did spread upstairs, but the rest of the house that we saw really didn't have flames. It was all from that hot, black, icky smoke spreading.
Yeah, and this is, this garage has a lot of, kind of your usual, we'll say kind of man cave kind of thing. We've got motorcycles, we've got all kinds of stuff in here. This could be anyone's home, anyone's garage.
Anyone's garage.
And this was just a typical Tuesday night kind of thing.
Yep.
And ended up changing their life for forever.
Forever. This will be a pivotal moment in their family history.
Yeah.
So if people want more information about fire prevention, go to your local fire department or go to the State Fire Marshal's website and get more information. And at this point, I would like to thank you for taking time today to walk us through this house so people can see what a house actually looks like after a fire and not the Hollywood version of it. And I want to also thank the homeowner for letting us come into his house and film all of this. Because
Absolutely.
he, like us, his intention was to make sure that this does not happen to someone else, so people understand how devastating a fire can be. Because we are actually standing here months after this fire occurred.
It is.
And he will not be back in his home for probably
For months more.
months more.
Yep.
So he's living out of a hotel. So please be proactive about fire prevention. Prevent the fire from happening in the first place. Know how to react by practicing a plan. And make sure that you have working smoke alarms in the right locations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for watching First Responder TV, your local public safety source. If you have an idea for a segment or an upcoming fire prevention or life safety event, please let us know. This is Kellie Murphy-Ringate giving you information you can use, to share, and to live by. See you next time.